You are live.
We are live. Good morning. This is May 30th, and this is Senate Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. What might be our last committee meeting of the year, we're not sure. And today we're going to be talking about H321. H321 passed out of this committee and was sent to the House. And we understand that the House is considering doing an amendment to that, and that's what we're going to talk about today, to understand the amendment and to talk about what we need to do going forward. So, Kirby, why don't you start and just tell us what this amendment is?
Sure. So, Kirby Keaton, Legislative Counsel. It's all right. I'll share the Senate proposal amendment and show you. So my understanding, what I've been told, is that H321 will hit the House floor this morning. It's one of the first 4 or so bills they're going to do. I don't know what order exactly, but when it comes up, it's expected that Representative Byron, who's the chair of House GovOps, will have a floor amendment to request a change to this. So this is the version that the Senate voted out. I won't go over all of the details. I think you all are familiar with what was on the floor. But there's 4 sections the Byron Amendment is expected to suggest removing. The first is section 4. Most of these things has to do with if you recall, the trim and harvest license that was being created. And the regulatory framework around that. So the 4 sections all have to do with that, but they also have a couple other things in a couple of the sections. So section 4 here has a change to establish licensing criteria for changes in ownership, control, or location of a cannabis establishment. So if this section is removed, so will that. This is the rulemaking section of law. So this is what I just mentioned, this T, and then the change in here also relating to the location or setting requirements being based off of regional population, market needs, community inputs.
So that's section 8?
Section 4.
Okay, section 4. That's in section 4 also.
So this just removes, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
So this just removes the proposed changes. It doesn't delete the entire section.
Correct, definitely. Just keeping it as current law, which would just, again, I believe the purpose is mostly related to the not creating this new trim and harvest license this time. So you have that in section 4. Then you have section 8, which relates to the creation of the license. So the Byron Amendment would remove 8, section 8 of the bill.
Section 8.
Yep. And so, in 8 here, it's a list of the license types. It would have been changed to 8 licenses. So, with removing this section, it'll stay 7. And then there will not be the mention of the trim and harvest being able to service multiple license establishments.
Okay. And all right, so section 8 is deleted.
Yep.
And then section 11 is deleted.
Correct. So section 11 here is the new section being added for the trim and harvest license. And then section 12 is the last that the Byron Amendment would remove, which has the fee for the trim and harvest services license. And it also has a couple other things, 3 other things. It has the 2-year option for employee ID cards, the 2-year option for the product registrations, and the elimination of the intent to apply fee are all here in section 12. That would be would not be changes in the law.
2-year harvest license, or 2-year license rather. And what was the third thing?
It's the fee for the trim and harvest license, the 2-year option for employee ID cards,
Mhm.
the 2-year option for product registrations. If you remember, the CCB was going to be able to put in the work to determine for some products that they would have a 2-year shelf life.
Mhm.
And then the last is the intent to apply fee, which was a fee that was used in the initial setting up of the whole system before there were any licenses granted. There was an license, like applicants were able to use this initial one-time intent to apply fee of $500, and then to subsequently seek a license within 1 year of the fee. So now that the system's up and running, this is kind of not helpful. But it'll stay in the law with the Byron Amendment. And I mean, I'll defer to the CCB, but it doesn't look like something that is going to cause a problem for them to just keep on the books.
So that's it in a nutshell. I think that's it for now. Let's perhaps have Pepper tell us what the effect of these changes might be.
For the record, James Pepper, Chair of the Cannabis Control Board. Just a little bit of the rationale for this. The H321, as it came over from the House, had a attorney position for the board. That really wasn't in anticipation of work in the future. That was to deal with the current workload that we have. Kind of predictably, as this market matures, the number of complaints that we receive, the investigations that we conduct, the notices of violation that we issue, the appeals that we have to deal with are increasing pretty rapidly. And
How many positions were added?
it was one position.
Just one.
Yeah. And the market is also just growing. Grew 20% last year. We added about 70 new businesses last year. That position was removed by Senate Appropriations on Tuesday. And so immediately I kind of spoke with the chair of this committee and the chair of the GovOps committee about kind of scaling this bill back so that it wasn't exacerbating the kind of workload issues at the board. And I think what this does is kind of takes out, the Byron Amendment kind of takes out the areas of the bill that would have added new administrative work for the board. Notably the trim and harvest license. So I don't know how much testimony you guys really heard about this, but essentially, we have about 420 cultivators right around there. They, around harvest time, especially the outdoor cultivators, have been bringing in seasonal workers to help them kind of just cut down their cannabis and move it to a place to store it and dry it and cure it. And so these companies have started to spring up organically. We had some security concerns about these kind of contractors coming in, seasonal workers coming in. There's certainly some biosecurity concerns as well about them, and we want to make sure that they're all insured. And
Were these domestic workers or were these workers from overseas?
They're domestic. Yes.
Domestic,
Yeah,
okay.
domestic. Yeah.
Were they required to be licensed, I assume?
They have to get. It's a little bit of a gray area, but I think we can require them to all have employee IDs. I mean, we don't require like a plumber or like an electrician to get an employee ID card. Everyone has to log in whenever they step foot into a cannabis establishment, other than the retailers.
Was that your intent, or is that something that you still have to talk about as a board? So whether or not you're going to require these people to be licensed in some way?
I think with the trim and harvest team, it would have solved the problem. They would have not only would the companies have to get one of these licenses, but all of their employees would have to have a cannabis employee ID card. I think we have the justification to just require these seasonal workers to get an employee ID card. So, it's a roundabout way of kind of getting something like this. It doesn't deal with the kind of biosecurity issues around them kind of transmitting pathogens from one farm to the next if they're not properly kind of cleaning their instruments in between trim and harvest. But I think, as far as just what we can handle right now, I think it's important just to wait on this until we just kind of reevaluate.
This is as much an issue of your staffing to be able to handle it.
Right. I mean, creating a new license type requires IT work. It requires rulemaking. It requires administration and enforcement, licensing, compliance, and enforcement. So it would just add to the kind of resource needs, statutory duties of the board. The other sections that are being cut out, the 2-year employee ID card, 2-year product registration, both of those, in the long run, will actually reduce our paperwork, but in the short run, in the immediate term, again, we have to kind of change our licensing portal, IT work. On the 2-year product registration specifically, there's 2 states that have this kind of Best Buy dates, or kind of they've set parameters around what types of products are shelf stable for 2 years, and it's Nevada and I think Colorado has some of this stuff. But really, because the FDA is not involved in cannabis at all, these aren't, there's not like a defined body of science around this. What we hear is that the seltzers that contain cannabinoids or THC, they're in an emulsion and they start to pull apart after some amount of time. So we need to kind of do a little bit of legwork. This was 2-year product registration was never going to be a snap your fingers and we just allow certain products at 2 years. I mean, some of them, there is some low hanging fruit, like a tincture, probably is okay for 2 years, but this was going to require a little bit of consultation with other states, with our Department of Health, with anyone who's willing to kind of talk to us about this anyway.
Whose idea was it to have the 2-year product registration?
It was a request from the industry. And I think that we're going to we want to get here. So I think the board will do its homework over the summer, and we have to do a comprehensive fee report. 2-year product registration, or it has is a fee, there's a fee associated with it. So we can have a section of that report dedicated to kind of the plan for having a 2-year product registration for certain products. So this work won't go undone. It just won't be available in the next 8 months.
Well, I think the bottom line of what you're saying from your perspective is that would require a measure of work to do in order to provide the groundwork necessary to have a 2-year license, and you do not believe that you're effectively staffed and to be able to do that in the short run?
That's right. The board itself, the kind of 3 members of the board, can work on the policy of the 2-year product registration over the summer and fall. And then we can come back next year, and hopefully if we're in a better position next year, we can just go ahead and do this.
But right now, you don't have the funding to do it.
That's right. The other thing, that the intent to apply was just it was meant to expedite the early rollout of licenses when there was a tremendous backlog. It's not being used anymore, so we just wanted to eliminate it, just so it's not confusing in our fee schedule, because it was an early market kind of startup issue. But it doesn't matter if it just kind of lays dormant for a while.
So you don't need that particular section at this point.
Right.
It was there at the time that you had a backlog, and you don't have that backlog anymore. And that was, which section of that was?
That's section 12.
That was 12.
Section 12 touches the fee schedules. And so we had proposed, 321 proposed to delete the intent to apply fee. By removing section 12, it'll leave it in current law, but it's not, it's just kind of an appendage of an earlier time. It's not going to cause any problems.
And otherwise, any other concerns about this?
No, I did want to touch on just one, if we have the time, just the retail siting. So, you guys gave us authority over retail siting last year for the first time ever to address the the concentration of cannabis establishments primarily in Burlington, but also in Rutland and a few other towns. When we got that authority, we voted to put a pause on issuing new retail licenses or even accepting applications for new retail licenses. That pause remains in effect till today. It's indefinite pause. The board will leave that in place. Your intent is very clear. This provision that's now being removed passed out of 6 different committees and has been voted on by the House and the Senate now. We know what your intent is, that you want more local control over this. So we will not open up retail siting until we can kind of establish that there is more local control over retail siting. So that, I don't think that there should be a concern about us further exacerbating the retail clustering problem, until you guys have a chance to fully weigh in on how you want retail siting to happen moving forward.
Well, there's a pause on retail siting. Was the pause statutory, or was that something that the committee or that the board decided on?
The board voted to close that.
And so there's nothing in statute that.
No.
Okay.
No, but I can tell you that we have no interest in creating more clustering in the towns that are fully saturated and oversaturated in some instances. So that's it. I mean, what it is.
That was obviously not addressed in any of this in any case.
No.
Just background.
You just gave us some additional retail siting authority, which had the effect of us removing our retail siting rule from our rule package that we just submitted to LCAR. So the fact that this made it this far, even though it's coming out, it's already had its intended effect, which is to start over on retail siting, just not lift the moratorium until we get more direction.
Any questions?
No questions. To be clear.
When you report this, the JFO note on these fees was de minimis. It was expected to be about $5,000. So by eliminating the trim and harvest fees, negligible.
So the votes on this amendment, the 3 committees in the House looked at it. They looked at it as a package. The Senate proposal of amendment to 321 plus the kind of Byron amendment that would strip things out. In House GovOps, it was 8-1. There was 1 person absent. The Ways and Means Committee, it was 7-0-4. There's 4 people absent. The Appropriations Committee was 6-5, and they had some concerns about the farmers market not being impact to the general funds, which is probably going to be mostly positive, but just the policy. Yeah. So there's a split there.
So favorable by 3 committees in the House.
Right. And it should be on the floor for this morning. So
At the House,
in
okay.
the House. Yeah.
Presumably they will send it to us at some point.
I hope so. So my recommendation for you, committee, for what it's worth, is that you would concur with this proposal. Yeah.
Very well.
Can you characterize the opposition?
To the farmers markets?
Yeah. Two of those committees had some negative votes.
Yeah.
I support what we're doing.
Right.
I'm just curious what kind of speed bump we're going to have.
Risk of inversion and diversion.
I think just the theoretical risk of moving a cannabis sale outside of the kind of strict protective confines of the retail establishment, and potentially, this is largely a cash industry. Maybe there's public safety risks. Maybe the Appropriations Committee took no testimony on the farmers markets, so they were kind of hearing about some of this stuff for the first time, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
Okay, thank you.
Don't think there are any other witnesses? So, going back, Kirby, what do we need to do in terms of notifying the secretary that we recommend that we concur with the House amendment?
It's a good question.
And we don't have the amendment yet, so
Right, so the House will have made changes, and they won't just concur, so it will go back to the Senate, and the entire Senate will have to deal with it today, presumably.
do we need anything from you for that, or is that simply floor action when it comes to the House amendment being presented.
I think it's for action. I'll try to be available though, if you do anything. Obviously we have a lot going on today, but how the education bill is something I'm
That's
staff.
gonna take weeks to solve.
It's gonna take today, so I think I'm done. So things are going on. Chris Roops, from JFO is helping me out, like keeping an eye on this.
Okay.
And so, I'll be available if you need me, but I think it might just be a 4 vote.
It's not premature, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to do a straw poll motion if you want, but I support this if you want to report. I don't know if Senator Weeks
I think
does.
it's a good idea that we,
So my recommendation is if it comes through, as described, yeah, I'm happy to support. If it comes through a little bit disturbed, that we caucus, recess and have a conversation, quick conversation, see what change, and then, but as it stands,
well, we have to wait, obviously, and see
Yes.
what happens in the House and see what comes over to us. Now, the question is, how will we get that? Presumably, they will send it over and we will get it through the Senate Secretary's office.
I can only imagine that the House will send it forthwith immediately.
Yeah, I would expect so. And we can just be on the lookout for it. And we have the straw poll that we've taken on this as it exists, and it's 3-0-0.
Does Senator Rom Hinsdale join us?
She is on Zoom, yes.
Oh, is she on right now?
She's on, she's muted, or.
Hi.
Oh, okay, are you there?
Yeah, I'm happy to be a yes in the straw poll.
Okay, fine, so it's 4-0-0.
1,
401.
401.
4-0-1, excuse me, right, correct. Good, okay, I guess we're done.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much.